Hey, how you doing, everybody? Zach here from Crossgates Family Fitness. Today we're going to be going over recovery and ways that you might be able to get your recovery to be better ways of sleeping, better ways of recovering and dieting that are all impacting your workouts, whether or not you're getting results. Okay, so we're going to tap into a few things today. We're going to go into what might be affecting it, but then also some tools that you can be doing that to improve it, to track it, and things like that. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's turn it on first. There we go. So how do we track your recovery? There's a few different ways. The easiest and best way is your sleep. When we sleep, everything happens in our body that is basically going to help us recover for the next day, but also tells us a lot about what we did in the previous days, right? So sleep is the number one way to track your recovery. We're going to get into resting heart rate as well. Your resting heart rate tells a lot about the things you ate, the things you drank, if it was alcohol and things like that, and also your fitness level. Your energy levels. This one is a little bit more intuitive, so a lot of times some people it's hard to tell, but if you're someone who's getting fatigued at 1 to 3 in the afternoon, your energy levels are probably down, which could mean that your diet is off. It could mean that you're not sleeping very well, that your caffeine intake might be high in the morning, but all of that is going to affect your recovery, and it's going to affect your workouts and your results. The next thing, inflammation and sickness. Those two kind of go together. A lot of times people think that, I just got this common cold, or I got this sinus infection, and not realizing that there's a lot that goes into that, and it's not just that you might have come in contact with someone who had the sniffles as well, or that you breathed in some pollen. A lot of times that inflammation and sickness is because you're not recovering very well, and your body is being depleted and having a hard time catching up. Your immune system gets compromised because of diet and lack of sleep and things like that. So those two can be very, very important if you're someone who's every single month or every few weeks you feel like you're kind of getting a little bit of cough, or your joints are inflamed and things like that. You could be not recovering very well. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of those. First thing I want to get into sleep. Like I said, sleep is probably the easiest and most effective way to track your recovery. Okay? So things that we look at when it comes to sleep. We want to look at deep sleep. How much are you getting? This deep sleep is what you should be in the beginning parts of the night. Most of your deep sleep is going to come from the first few hours that you fall asleep. So if you're someone who falls asleep for just a short period of time and they're waking up and then tossing and turning and things like that, you probably aren't in that deep sleep state. Your body should be so ready to fall asleep at the end of the night that you clunk out and go straight into deep sleep. The next thing is REM sleep. REM sleep is important because we know that so many things happen in the body during REM sleep that are going to affect your recovery. So REM sleep just stands for rapid eye movement, and so a lot of times people that lack enough REM sleep also don't get enough recovery. The REM sleep tends to happen later in the night into the early morning. Heart rate variability. So this is a big term that's been talked about or getting talked about in fitness a lot these days. Heart rate variability is basically a measurement of time between your heartbeats. Okay, and a lot of times what we can tell from that is it kind of goes hand in hand with the resting heart rate as well. Those two work really hand in hand and basically tell us if your heart rate is elevated through the night. For instance, one example would be if it takes 5 or 6 hours in your 8-hour night of sleep for your heart rate to get to its resting level, that took too long. Just like with the deep sleep, if you're going into deep sleep early in the night, your heart rate or resting heart rate should drop very quickly. If it's not, you're probably not getting to deep sleep early enough. Your body's not getting to a resting spot until maybe 5-6 hours into your night of sleep. And if you're only getting 8 hours, then really you got 2 hours of good sleep, right, which isn't enough by any means. So those two kind of work interchangeably, but we definitely want your heart rate to drop as quickly as possible, which is also going to increase your heart rate variability, because the slower your heart is beating, the more time is in between each heartbeat and each electrical rhythm in your heart, which means better recovery. The next thing, body temperature. This is a very important one. This is one that also, with obviously the pandemic still going on, this was something that people were tracking for COVID reasons. Because when your when your body temperature is elevating, even if it's only a half a degree, a lot of times that's an alert to your body, or should be an alert to you, to say, hey, something could be on the horizon. So with COVID protocols, we could tell if someone was wearing a wearable that we're going to talk about in a little while that checked their body temperature, or if you were, checking body temperature when you went into your work and things like that. If you were slowly elevating, even if it was only a few points above your normal, usually that means that something's on the horizon, and you can start to detect whether or not you're getting enough recovery or if you're getting sick, which we also just talked about. Sickness often is related to not recovering. So not only can it tell if you're not recovering, but also if you're getting sick. So body temperature is extremely, extremely important to track. And we're also going to talk about temperatures in your room and things like that and the best conditions to sleep in a little bit. And then the last one is respiratory rate. Obviously, our heart rate and respiratory rate go together, just like if you're working out and you're pushing yourself, it makes it harder to breathe, right? And your heart rate is elevated, respiratory rate is elevated, right? And when that happens, when your respiratory rate elevates, you don't get as much oxygen into your system. So we want slower, deeper breathing when you sleep, which helps with recovery because it's providing oxygen to the muscles and to the body. So a little bit more on sleep. Like I said before, deep sleep might be the most important sleep. One, because it sets the tone for the night, because if you're getting into deep sleep early, that means that you're starting your recovery process earlier. It also releases growth hormone during that time, which helps stimulate muscle growth and bone growth, repairs muscle tissue, and also burns fat. So if you're not getting enough deep sleep, you're not repairing the muscle. So if you're someone who comes to the gym 4 to 6 days a week, you're doing lifting and things like that, you're breaking down muscle tissue. And when you do that, you have to repair it. Some of that is diet. We're going to talk about water intake in a little bit. But also it happens when you sleep that certain hormones are released at certain times of the night. So if you're not getting into that deep sleep, those hormones aren't being released as much. So it can definitely help out when it comes to soreness and things like that. The next thing, lack of sleep. Lack of sleep can cause slower muscle recovery, changes in mood, increased levels of stress hormones like cortisol, and then increased ratings of perceived exertion. So we'll start at the top. So we just talked about the muscle recovery. So if you're not getting enough sleep, your muscles probably aren't getting recovery with the deep sleep. And then changes in mood. How many times have you had a toddler that hasn't had enough sleep, and you know how crazy they are, right, Nate? With your kids, if they get a little antsy and aggravated and irritated, okay? Well, guess what? That doesn't change as we get older and we get into adulthood. Sometimes we can check ourselves a little bit, depending on our scenarios. Kids can't always. So that's a very good example for you to realize that that's happening to you. You just know how to control it slightly, sometimes not. Maybe you do snap on someone here and there, right? But a lot of times it's because of lack of sleep. And so that can cause irritability and things like that and changes in mood, which can affect whether or not you want to go work out. How many times have you woke up in the morning for an early morning workout and said, I'm exhausted. I'm going to take the extra hour today and I'm going to sleep a little bit more, which might not have been the bad choice because you probably needed it. It was probably your body saying yes, but had you got up and forced yourself to go in, you probably would have been agitated, might not have had the best workout that you wanted, and then put yourself in a bigger hole by not getting that sleep, right? So I'm not saying skip your workouts, but I'm saying let's do the things and go to sleep a little earlier to make sure we don't run into that problem. And then increased cortisol levels. This is something we're going to talk about in a few slides today because cortisol is the number one stress hormone that is going to affect your sleep and recovery and stress levels. Okay, and also is affected by your diet. And it's a vicious cycle. So we're going to touch on that in a little bit more, but that cortisol level is extremely, extremely important in many facets of recovery and fitness. And then increased ratings of perceived exertion. So basically, rate of perceived exertion is when you're in a workout and I said, hey, Larry, I want you to do 10 squats with 50 pounds for me. After you did that 10 squats, I say, now give me a rating from 1 to 10. How hard was that, 10 being the hardest? If you tell me 8 was the rate of perceived exertion. So when you're tired and you haven't recovered, that 50 pounds that you might be doing every single day, Larry, that you've been doing for a month now that seemed easy a week ago, you maybe slept 5 hours last night. You come in, you grab that 50 pounds, and now it's heavy, right? It's heavier than it's felt in the last month. That's because you haven't recovered. So a lot of times when you grab that same weight and you're like, man, for some reason this just feels so much heavier today. A lot of times that's just because you haven't recovered enough. That's not because you're getting weaker. It just means you haven't recovered. Your nervous system isn't working and firing on all cylinders. So your workouts seem tougher because you haven't recovered enough, but then the adverse effect is most people try to push through, or they continue to grab the same weight that they've always grabbed, because we are creatures of habit and we tend to just go to the same weight every time. And so when you do that, you're actually just digging yourself deeper into that hole, because after that workout, you're going to be more fatigued versus maybe backing it down, doing a 35 or 40 pound squat, and then allowing your body to recover. So you're taking it slightly easier. You're still getting the work and the benefit, but I want that. If your normal rate of perceived exertion is an 8 for that exercise, I want it to be an 8 consistently. I don't want it some days to feel like a 10 and some days to feel like a 5. I want to keep you at that 8 level the whole time, okay? And then here's an interesting fact. 9 exercisers are 44% more likely to develop sleep disorders compared to only 19% for people who participate in vigorous exercise consistently. So sleep disorders is a huge umbrella of things, but from a recovery standpoint, the easiest way to look at it is you're not recovering, you're probably not sleeping enough, you're not getting enough deep sleep, but that is a drastic number in my opinion. So a lot of times exercising releases certain hormones in your body and regulates your body so that you can clunk out at night and get that better sleep. So don't think that exercise is always a negative effect, because sometimes it can also be a positive. Making sure that you're not trying to push yourself beyond your limits, right? You want to push yourself, but you also want to have that balance of not going too hard. Tips for good sleep. Decrease pre-bedtime blue light exposure. So this is something that's been very top of mind for a lot of people lately. iPhones and pretty much all phones now have the blue light setting that you can turn off. Mine is set from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. Every day it shuts off. Why? Because blue light is high intensity and it decreases your natural melatonin production in your body. So when you're sitting in front of that phone or you're watching the TV, that blue light is just beaming into your eyes, and basically that's telling your body that the sun is coming up. And if the sun's coming up, our body naturally will try to wake itself up versus trying to put itself to sleep. So go check your phone if you haven't already. Put that blue light setting on. You can set the timer to whatever you want. They also have glasses that you can buy that just kind of look like reading glasses that have blue light lenses on them that will block the blue light as well. So if you're watching TV and you can't, some TVs don't have the blue light setting yet, you can watch TV with the glasses on and then go to sleep a lot easier, okay? Keep cooler room temperatures. This is something that me and my girlfriend fight over every single night, is the room temperature. Studies show that 65 degrees is actually the correct temperature. So if you're the person like me that is the sweater and I sleep with just a sheet because I want to be cold, that's me, right? So 65 degrees. So that's room temperature. That doesn't, if you want to put a blanket over you, that's fine, but having that air circulating at that room temperature can be very beneficial to getting deeper sleep. Avoid late night meals, because it keeps your digestive system working when it should be preparing for sleep. So a lot of times, people don't realize that when you intake food, your body has to work to break that down. Okay, so a lot of people think don't eat late at night because it adds fat and puts weight on. Not 100% true. There's a little bit back and forth with that. But one thing we do know from a recovery standpoint is that it makes your body continuously work. So if you eat and then go to sleep, if your body's working, how is it supposed to get into that deep sleep, right? So you want to make sure that you avoid meals, late night meals, and avoid the PM caffeine. And this is something that I learned recently that's affected the way that I consume caffeine, is that caffeine has a half-life of 5 to 7 hours. And what that means is it doesn't matter how much caffeine you consume, whether it's 100 milligrams or 300 milligrams from an energy drink, half of that will be burned in 5 to 7 hours. So if you take in, I only have a small cup of coffee, that's 80 to 100 milligrams of caffeine. Well, it's still, in 5 to 7 hours, it's only going to burn half of that. Whereas if you drink a 300 milligram energy drink at 2 in the afternoon, it's going to take 5 to 7 hours for it to burn 150 milligrams of that caffeine. So you still are going to have 150 by 9 o'clock at night when your body is trying to go to sleep. So trying to get rid of having those afternoon caffeines. If you do, obviously make it a smaller amount, but try to avoid caffeine after afternoon. Avoid late night alcohol. So this is one that's a big one. Of course, we live in New Orleans where everyone loves to drink and have that glass of wine at night and things like that. Well, here's the problem, is it makes you feel sleepy, but you're not actually sleepy. Why? Because it increases your heart rate. So yes, you feel sleepy, but your body is working harder to recover from it and process it. So it increases your heart rate, which we talked about previously. If your increased heart rate, it's going to take longer for your resting heart rate to drop throughout the night, which means you're not going to get into deep sleep as quickly, which means it's going to affect your REM sleep and affect your recovery. It's going to disrupt your circadian rhythm. So kind of just talked about that. It's going to affect your deep sleep and REM sleep and things like that. Wait 3 hours before going to sleep if you are going to drink. So if you have it earlier in the night. Wait a little bit longer to go to sleep. Let your body process it a little bit more. And then also hydrate with water. So if you're having multiple drinks, have a water in between. If you have one drink, have some water after. Okay? And that helps flush it through your system. Breathing. So breathing is a huge component when it comes to recovery. And most people, some of my people right here, can you do me a favor? I want you to take a really, really big deep breath. Just sitting down. Take a really big deep breath. 1, 2, 3, go. So here, most people, when they take a deep breath, where do they go? They go up, right? Causes tension, stress, all these neck muscles. And we use muscles to breathe that aren't designed to facilitate breathing. They're helping muscles in that process, but they're not our prime movers. Our prime mover is our diaphragm. Okay, it's a pump. It's actually a muscle that fits like an umbrella. We have 2 of them, a right and a left side, right under our rib cage. And basically that is our pump for breathing, or it's our main one. There's also a bunch of supporting muscles like our scalenes and all these big muscles up here in our neck and in our chest and on the sides of our ribs. But our biggest one is our diaphragm. Okay, so diaphragmatic breathing can also help facilitate recovery, because if we're breathing properly, we're going to lower our resting heart rate, we're going to lower our respiratory rate, all of those things. But then also we're going to take a lot of tension and stress out of the neck, which we're going to talk about in a little bit of how to get out as well. But some of the other things it does, it decreases cortisol levels. When you're breathing optimally, it affects your hormones. It increases melatonin. It improves breathing efficiency, like I talked about, using the right muscles. And it can decrease stress in the neck and shoulders. It can decrease pain in your lower back. It's amazing how many people have breathing deficiencies that are causing pain in their neck, shoulders, lower back, hips, and things like that. So a lot of times what people don't realize is our posture in our daily life is affected by our breathing, and our breathing is affected by our posture. Okay, so if you're someone who sits all day at work, okay, you're sitting all day, it's very hard for you to breathe through your stomach if you're sitting and your stomach is squished, right? So where do we tend to breathe? Either through our lower back or through our shoulders and neck. So we get this posture right here, okay, and we start to breathe with the wrong muscles and in the wrong directions. So when we can start to help put you in better positions to facilitate better breathing, it allows the muscles that are overworking to relax, because they shouldn't be, and allow the right muscles to work, which can decrease stress throughout the entire body, okay, and decrease pain. So that gets into some foam rolling. A lot of times the breathing and into the bad positions, we get stuck into those positions. One of the easiest ways to fix that, or to help with it, is to foam roll. So foam rolling is basically a way to improve range of motion and flexibility, decrease muscle tension, and also increase blood flow to the muscles. So what happens is, without trying to get too scientific, is we have fascia around our whole body that is like the thin lining around a muscle, and that fascia is actually where we hold the tension. For a long time, it used to be thought that we held it in our muscles, and it was lactic acid and all those different things. Really, it's the fascia that's around the muscle. And basically, when you foam roll, you're creating friction between that fascia and the muscle tissue, which helps hydrate it, bring nutrients to that area, decrease the tension in that area. And so when we start to learn how to breathe and stretch, we're actually using the right muscles in the right area and allowing air to be pushed into those areas. Whereas if that fascia is really tight, it's going to be restricted, and it's going to be hard for you to breathe into that position, right? Next, it must be done consistently. So you can't just come to the gym 2 to 3 times a week and foam roll for the 5 minutes when you're here. It's got to be something. You got to buy the foam roller at home. We use, in my opinion, these Roga rollers. For me, I've used so many different kinds, the flat ones, the spiky ones, the vibrating ones. There's a million of them. They have now the massage gun tools, which are really, really good. If you have someone to do it on you, it's a lot easier. But for yourself, a Roga roller is probably the best one to use. I love it for a few reasons, but one is that you can see the grooves in here. It allows your bones to sit within the grooves so that the muscle tissue actually gets, or the foam roller gets on more surface area of the muscle tissue and the fascia tissue. So I really like these. We actually sell them in our lifestyle stores, and you'll also see them on our fitness floors at all 3 locations. So grab one of these if you've been using that flat one. Try out this one and see how it feels. It's going to hurt a little bit at first, and that's semi-okay. Remember that rate of perceived exertion? Well, rate of pain, say maybe a 6. If it's more than that, maybe we need to back it down a little, but try to push it just a little bit. If it hurts, it probably means you need it a little bit, all right? So, and they do make different densities. So we carry the standard at all of our locations, but if you're interested in like the roller, but it's a little too tough, if you go to Roga's website, they have a softer version. They also have a harder version as well to do that. And then it can be done before going to sleep to relax tense muscles. So that's one of the things I love doing. I love doing it first thing in the morning, but I also love doing it late at night because it allows my body to relax. I also pair that with some breathing and things like that, which help me fall asleep, helps my body get into that relaxing mode. So water intake. So we talked about it a little bit with the alcohol, is that it helps flush out toxins in our body, like alcohol. Okay? It transports nutrients to the cells. It helps regulate body temperature. Remember, body temperature, if it's elevated, we're not going to get into that deep sleep. It could also mean that we have inflammation and sickness coming. It helps with muscle soreness and tension. And the biggest thing is drink half your body weight in ounces per day. How many of y'all were the carried around a gallon jug a day person? Anybody? I tried it and I realized real quickly that's way too much water for me. And then I learned, I was only supposed to be drinking half my body weight in ounces. And a whole gallon is way more than half my body weight. Now on a day if I'm going golfing or something like that where I'm out in the sun and I'm doing activity for a lot longer, then yes, I need to increase my water intake. But in general, you want about half your body weight in ounces per day. That's not coffee, even though there's water in coffee. Okay, so anything other than water is excluded. Sports drinks, any of that. Water, just water. All right, half your ounces in body weight per day, and that's going to help flush out all those things, keep your body hydrated, okay, and help with recovery. So diet, all right, so high levels of fiber, saturated fats, and sugar can have a negative impact on sleep, okay, so all of those things are going to keep your body going, it keeps your digestive system working, and then insufficient calories can increase cortisol levels that increase stress and disrupt sleep. So remember I talked about cortisol before. Cortisol is huge because if you're not eating enough calories, you're going to increase your cortisol levels. I mean, you're going to be higher stress. Remember, hangry? How many of you get hangry if you don't have enough food in your system? That's your cortisol level increasing and all that stress coming. Okay? What happens when your cortisol levels are increased? Sleep, boom, tanks. What happens when you don't sleep? Typically don't work out very much, which doesn't increase your cortisol levels. When you don't do that, typically you're not eating enough again, and then you just get in this big vicious circle of I don't sleep enough, so I increase cortisol. I don't eat enough, so I increase cortisol. And you just keep going. The easiest way to affect that, you got to jump into the circle somewhere, right? We got to break the link in the chain, is eat enough calories. Because you really can't tell yourself to sleep more. We try every night, I know I do, but you can't. So the one thing to do is try to eat more calories. I would say about 90% of the clients that we work with are under eaters. And I know Michelle, who did our nutrition appointment or our nutrition seminar last night, she talked heavily about that, about how most of our clients are just not eating enough. Their metabolism has tanked, their cortisol levels have increased, and it's affecting their diet, their results, and their recovery, right? And she mentioned this last night as well, is eat as much nutrients as you possibly can to reach your goals. This will increase your energy levels and improve your sleep. So what most people don't realize is our goal as humans is we should be trying to put as much nutrients and healthy things in our body as we possibly can to push us to that limit to still get results. So if you're, obviously we need to know, we know that we need to be in a caloric deficit to lose weight, right? So if your goal is to lose weight, we need to be a little bit under your daily burn. So if your daily burn is 2,500, you need to be 2,000 to 2,100 to lose body fat. But we want to pack as much nutrients into that 2,000. So yes, if you might be eating healthy and all healthy foods and natural foods, but you're only getting 1,200, then we're not packing as much nutrients as we possibly can, which probably means you're not going to get results. Cortisol levels go up, recovery goes down, okay, which again puts us in that vicious circle. The next thing I want to talk about is some ways to track recovery. So we sell Polar watches downstairs in our lifestyle store, which I know a lot of our members have, which track sleep and recovery and things like that, depending on what model you have. I know Amazon has their Halo, I believe it's called now, that they just put out. iWatch has all of theirs, but I want to tell you about some that maybe you haven't heard of. And two of them that are really big in the professional sports arenas and military is the Whoop Band and the Oura Ring. I'm an Oura Ring wearer, so I have this one on the right here. But they basically do the same thing, and they track sleep and recovery. So every day I wake up, before I even get out of bed most days, I'm opening up my phone, I'm clicking my Oura Ring app, and I'm letting it download all that information from my sleep so that I see how I recovered. And some of the cool things that it does, it tells me body temperature, it tells me my respiratory rate, it tells me how much deep sleep I had. It tells me how much REM sleep I had. It tells me my activity level. It gives me an activity level based on how I recovered. So some days, on a Friday night, if I went out with some friends and had a few drinks, I wake up Saturday morning and it says, hey, you should probably only burn 250 active calories today. Why? Because I didn't recover enough to push myself. So what do? I dial it back. Maybe I don't go try to kill myself and do a heavy leg workout. Maybe I go do a light workout. Maybe I take the day off, depending on how I am. Some days I might sleep well and might say, hey, burn 600 calories today active. So then I know in my workout I have more that I can push myself without tanking myself and putting myself back in that vicious cycle of not recovering. And both of them do the same. It's just a lot of times depending on where, if you want to wear something on your finger or wear something on your hand. I wear a watch, so I didn't want to wear 2 wrist straps. Basically, that's mainly the only reason I didn't go with the Whoop Band, but they both do very similar things. And for the money that it cost, I could tell you the Whoop Band, they do theirs on a subscription, so it's like there's different options that you can pay, and basically it equals out to about $300 depending on the life or the amount of months you want to pay it, right, until it's paid off. The Oura Ring is just a one-time fee, and it's about $300. So they're about the same price point, so it really just depends, which is also like the Polar and Apple Watches. Everything, they're all about $300. So it just depends on which one you prefer. But the main thing that I want you to get out of this is you got to track sleep and recovery. Because if you don't know the numbers and you don't know how you're recovering, you're going into every single day blind. You have no idea if you should be pushing yourself, dialing it back, and it's always better when someone tells you, yes, you are feeling good. Go push yourself, and you're like, yeah, I am feeling good today. I'm going to do that. Or the days when you need to get put in check and say, hey, dial it back. Don't go crazy today. Don't push yourself too hard. Sometimes it's good to know that someone else sees that or that you're not just feeling that yourself and that you're not feeling fatigued. But the other part of it is if it tells you not to push yourself and you still go do it anyway, you're going to get to see how those numbers just continuously go down and down and down and down until you're not sleeping very much and you're not recovering. You start to get sick and get inflammation and all those things. So don't just get it for the sake of getting it because it's cool. I want you to get it and actually do what it says and track your progress and track your recovery. All right? So any questions that you guys have about recovery or anything like that? Yes.
Should you also be concerned with what you do? Like, should you say just do a day that's just basically low cardio kind of thing, or no, you still do strength and everything, but you just do it less intense?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So Larry asked if you know that you need to back it down because your recovery wasn't as good. Should you change what type of exercise that you do, whether it's strength training or cardio and things like that? I would say the one thing that our body doesn't know is if we are doing squats or running from a bear. Stress is stress on our body. Just keeping it very basic. For the general population person, now for athletes, they get real dialed in because they are on strict programs and undulating things. For general population, we're just trying to feel good every day, right? That's our main goal. We want to wake up feel like we have energy, not have aches and pains. And so from a general standpoint, I would tell you it doesn't matter too much as long as you keep your rate of perceived exertion lower than your norm. So if your norm you feel like is a 7 or an 8, and you know you didn't recover, maybe you need to go at a 5 or maybe a 6, depending on how well you feel. But I wouldn't tell you that it matters what you do. It's more so the rate of perceived exertion, because any exercise, whether it's jogging on a treadmill, doing squats, bench pressing, any of those things, it's stress to the body at the end of the day. Now, if you have certain muscle groups that are more sore or hurting, so if you wake up and I feel like my legs haven't recovered from my workout yesterday, then maybe you need to not do legs and just focus on upper body. But if it's just an overall fatigue thing, it really doesn't matter too much what you do. Just make sure that rate of perceived exertion is lower than what you normally push yourself, because your body has no idea what you're doing externally. It only knows what's happening internally, and it's stress to the body from working out. So that's a good question. Anything else?
Can I foam roll too much?
No. Easy answer. I've never heard someone say that they hurt themselves foam rolling. One of my favorite things when I was training full-time is that I got to foam roll with every one of my clients in groups. So I was foam rolling 8 to 10 times a day, and I could tell you now that I'm not in that role, I feel the difference on my body. I wish I could go back to foam rolling 8 times a day because I felt better. And I don't have, it's not that I have aches and pains, but when I've been at that optimal level and I held it for so long to now just be slightly dialed back, intuitively I know that there's a difference. So I would never say that you can foam roll too much. So I wouldn't be too worried about foam rolling too much. If anything, most people need to foam roll more. The other thing with foam rolling is it's better to do it prior to your workout, which is something that most people typically don't do. They do their workout and then they feel the lactic acid and the pump in their muscles, and they feel like they need to roll it to flush it out, which can be beneficial and has shown some benefits, but actually the bigger benefit from foam rolling happens prior to working out and allows the muscles to relax, takes tension out. It actually increases our ability to stretch our muscles and to gain flexibility prior into going into our workout and our strenuous exercise. So if you're only going to do it once, do it before your workout, and then before you go to sleep too. But if you're going to do it while you work out and while you're at the gym, do it before. If you have time, do it after, because there are some small benefits, but the majority of the benefit comes from doing it prior to your workout, for sure. Good. Anything else? Awesome. So, biggest takeaways, we need to get more sleep, more deep sleep, right? And how do we do that? The easiest way is to affect our diet. So if you haven't listened, go back and listen to Michelle's presentation from last night. It'll be on our YouTube page. But go listen to her about how your diet is affecting your metabolism, and not eating enough will increase cortisol levels and affect your sleep and recovery. So, and also your results. So the easiest way to affect your recovery, because we have to do something, right? We can't just tell ourselves to go sleep more or get better sleep. I wish it was that easy. So the easiest way is diet, and then also monitoring your rate of perceived exertion during your exercise. Okay? So that's our 2 big takeaways. Work on the diet, work on dialing in your exercises based on how you feel. Don't feel bad just because you normally pick up a 50-pound weight. It's okay to do a little less for one day. It's not going to kill you. It's not going to make you weaker. It's not going to ruin your results. If anything, it's going to enhance them because it's going to allow your body to recover. Okay? So I appreciate y'all coming today, and the rest of the seminars will be on our YouTube page as well. So go look at Rendy and Michelle's nutrition seminars if you haven't already. I know you were here earlier for Rendy's. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Thank y'all. I appreciate it.